It got to 27 degrees here last night. We're going to share with you how 27 degrees affects all the different fruit trees that we're growing here in our Zone 8B fruit orchard. The first tree that's closest to the road, and we're going to work our way back, is this Sage-O persimmon. This way is the north, that way is the south, so we got a northwesterly wind, and when it hit this tree, we got some pretty extensive damage right here. And I've got fruit that is starting to form here, getting ready to flower, and I noticed that everywhere I have freeze damage on the limbs, it looks like my fruit is going to suffer some damage also. But right next to it here is a limb that didn't suffer very much damage, and the fruit looks fine here. I'm expecting that I'm going to lose at least half of the fruit that the Sage-O was getting ready to bear. And it was absolutely loaded this year. As a couple of days ago, I was really excited for what this Sage-O was going to do this year. Now right behind me, I've got Gyro, Itchy Gyro. And it looks like some of the leaves on it suffered a little more damage, but it suffered the damage on the south side for some reason. The ones that are on the north side, not so much. I'm kind of skeptical to say which one was a little more cold hardier compared between Sage-O and Itchy Gyro. But I've got good fruit set on here, starting to come on, and it's later in stages compared to the Sage-O. So I might not have as much fruit damage here. Right here on the northwest side, see how the fruit is smaller in here? And it doesn't look like it damaged as much. So I think because this variety sets fruit later, we're not going to have as much damage. We're going to have more of a fruit harvest. All right, let's go check out the pears. Pears seem to be a little more cold hardy. I've got initial fruit set, and I got about 7 different varieties here. I'm not going to go through all the different varieties, but I can tell you that Kiefer, the fruit looks pretty good. It doesn't look like I suffered much damage on that. I've got blooms on other varieties that are starting to form, and they look good also. I think the pears are going to weather the 27 degrees a little bit better. This is Sam Houston Peach. It's just started blooming a couple of days ago. Doesn't look like the blooms at all were affected by the 27 degrees. And the foliage on it that was starting to come out still looks good too. Same situation with Louisiana variety, Feliciana. Just starting to bud out. Doesn't appear that it suffered very much damage. Now this is a grafted tree that I cut down last year, Florida Best, and it had set peaches back in January. This one bloomed. And I'm looking at the peaches, and I'm not seeing very much freeze damage on the peaches. The peaches may have survived 27 degrees. I'm really excited. I very seldom ever get fruit on this because generally at younger stages we get that same level of freeze and it aborts all the fruit. Right next to it I put on a graft of Georgia Belle last year, and it too is also starting to bloom. It looks decently okay. Now here's another stone fruit. This is a plum. This is Shiro golden plum, and the blooms look good on it. I don't think we're going to suffer any damage at all. Same thing for Leona pear. I've got little pears in here. I've got blooms that are still starting to come on, and it doesn't appear that I suffered any damage. The leaves, the foliage looks virtually untouched. Shell apple actually bloomed right after our hard freeze in December, set fruit in January. Last night, I really wasn't concerned that the apple would survive. The apples seem to do the best out of all my fruit is withstanding freezes. It can withstand probably temperatures down in the low 20s before you start seeing apple damage. Even the foliage looks virtually untouched. This big nectarine tree, Sun Racer, was our biggest concern. We hardly ever get any fruit off of it because a late freeze always gets it. I was really concerned that we were going to lose all the fruit. We came up here, covered one limb, and I think even though we covered the limb, it still suffered the same amount of damage. Probably going to lose about half the crop of our nectarines. We are seeing some freeze damage on this. These little nectarines are definitely freezer damaged, but some of them that are hanging low underneath the limb, not so much. So I think these fruits that are hanging under leaves and under limbs were a little more protected. Frost didn't settle on them, and I think these are going to be just fine. I think we're still going to get a decent harvest because of how big the tree actually is. I'm looking here at Chicago Hardy Fig. It's supposed to be one of the most cold tolerance out of all my figs. And as you can see, the leaves took a lot of damage. I'm looking here in the middle of the new growth where I'm expecting to see figs. I'm not seeing figs form yet. We may actually get a crop out of this as long as the new growth holds on there or it starts pushing new growth. We might get a little later crop than expected, but we still might get one. If I had a fig tree that was exposed to the weather, it seemed to have suffered a lot of damage. We went through a lot of our younger growth on the trees that got hit really hard during our 15-degree weather we had in December. It killed all the tops, except for the one down there. And we were starting to get new growth up to a foot tall coming up from the roots. So last night I went and got some hay and I hayed those down. We're going to get down to 32 again tonight. I'm leaving them all covered up. But that growth down there is under so much hay, that should have been completely fine. Now, let's go over and check out the mulberries. Shangri-La mulberry, we seldom get a good harvest off of this, again, because it wants to flower early and it usually suffers freeze damage. This year, we got several bellyfuls of fruit, and last night, it took a lot of damage, but when we come out here today, if there were any blackberries, they're laying all on the ground. So all we got now is some red berries left on the tree.
There you go.
And the red berries, they suffered a lot of damage. I don't think any of our fruit is going to make it. Tastes bad. That totally didn't make it. So essentially it seems like we lost all the fruit on our mulberry. We have other varieties that will fruit later in the year. We always rely on varieties such as Illinois Everbearing to be a good producer for us in this zone. Behind me I got Pakistan, and Pakistan looked like it took a bigger hit than Shangri-La did, but I didn't have any fruit on that. I don't know why it didn't fruit. It's been in the ground 4 years, hasn't fruited yet. Blanc de Beau, which is a white wine grape, some people use it as a table grape, was getting ready to bloom, had nice growth coming on it, and it looks like we lost our entire crop of white grapes this year. It was a strong grower. Does it look like it's going to come back? I think it will come back. I don't think it killed the vine, but it looks like it got this year's harvest or this year's crop. My Concord actually is just starting to bud up. It's nowhere near flowering yet. So we'll actually end up getting fruit off of our Concord if it decides to flower for us again this year. This is my brown turkey fig. It's a large tree. It's probably been here 40 years. It was here when we bought the place. And it's kind of protected by the canopy of this pecan tree. I actually expected this to do very well. And it is actually putting on little figs. It's covered in little figs and it fills out every year. And I could just pick 5-gallon bucket loads off of this tree. And it looks like it may have damaged some of the crop. Some of the early pushings of figs looks like it may have got damaged. All the foliage got hit, and so we're going to end up losing probably every leaf on this tree. And we'll do an update later and see if we get any fruit off of it towards July, is typically when it bears. On our way out to show you the fig orchard, figured I'd stop off and just talk a little bit about our in-ground garden. We had potatoes that were up, we had tomatoes, squash, pumpkins, everything was growing good. We definitely didn't want to lose any of that stuff because it's not going to come back. We went and got a bale of hay that was not being used. It came off of this land 2 years ago and was sitting at the edge of the pasture. And we've sprinkled hay over all the top of everything, completely covered it up. Some of it even is covered with buckets with hay on top, and they should be just fine. We'll uncover that tomorrow after tonight's frost, and then we should be good for the year. We had Glacier Negra in the very corner, and with it being so tall, we weren't sure how to best cover it, so we went and got this piece of tarp, and I just looked at it, and it doesn't look like to have survived the freeze at all. I'm gonna go ahead and take the cover off of that. We are gonna have some more, well, we're going 32 degrees. It looks like frost isn't gonna bother with this one. Hoping that it would come back. We did have hay piled all the way up to here, so hopefully the stem didn't suffer any damage and we can get some lower branching and stuff to come up from here. So I think overall the plant's going to be fine, but we definitely lost that new growth and those leaves at the top. And I'm sure it'll be the same with these others also. So lesson learned, tarps don't protect figs, young tender growth. Yeah, hopefully we get some branches growing from the bottoms. Just as a sneak peek, I just want to lift this up and just kind of take a peek under here, see what's going on. We had this very well protected. Now, let me say this as a disclaimer. While we were away on vacation, we got a 35-degree night. We had spotted frost, and I believe that damage is actually from the frost that we had. So we come through here last night, we covered this up, and we'd already had some damage on the top from a day or two prior to. But the growth on the lower looks completely fine. Stems overall looks fine. Cover that back up for the night, and tomorrow we'll uncover everything. Yesterday when we were out here covering this up with hay, we had this entirely covered. Late in the evening we got a little bit of a wind coming through, and I believe the hay settled around some of these plants and exposed the top. Down in here a little further, the leaves seem to be okay. The stem, the new growth seems to be okay. That top limb got all the damage, but it looks like the stems are okay. Let's go ahead and cover this one on back up for the night, and maybe we can protect the rest of those leaves from the light frost that we're going to get tonight. We're not really protecting from freezing temperatures, just from that frost settling on those leaves. I come up to this one, and it looks like the same thing was happening, but there was a little bit of hay on top. Uncover that. The leaves seem to, it looks okay. It looks completely okay. Let's see what variety this is also. This is Colonel Littman's Black Cross. So it looks to be a little more cold hardy than some of the other varieties so far. Patsy's Pride. Looks like it got some damage to it, but I think it's going to be okay. Check this out, guys. We come up to this one, it's completely bare. Looks like it had been out all night, uncovered. No freeze damage whatsoever. Let's see what variety this is. You're not gonna believe it. This is Smith. It's known to be cold sensitive, but it looks like it had weathered this freeze untouched. Now, I don't know if this all settled down around after. I don't know if this settled, if the hay settled down off the plant after the freeze was over, but I have to believe with the way this was exposed that it's stayed uncovered all night long, untouched. That's amazing. All right, guys, we won't know the full extent to all the damage until we get all the hay off. We're gonna pull that off tomorrow after I get home from work, and we're just gonna use this hay to mulch around all of our plants and help conserve moisture, break down, and fertilize the trees. So we're going to utilize all the hay that we brought out here yesterday. I hope you enjoyed the update. Thanks for watching and coming along with us and seeing how our fruit trees fared. Maybe we'll get some fruit this year. Maybe all of our figs will survive. Who knows? Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if this is your first time watching. Remember, keep growing, keep building, and always keep adventuring. And together, we're Flomaton Famous. We'll see you next time.